Hi, on the very day I sold my startup, the dream I'd built from nothing, she served me divorce papers. Betrayed and broken, I thought it was the end. But this is my story of pain, strength, and a comeback that no one saw coming. Watch till the end. You won't believe what happens next. The office was unusually quiet for a Friday morning. My team had cleared out early the night before after popping champagne to celebrate what we all knew was imminent. The acquisition deal I had spent 2 years grinding toward was finally closing. By noon today, I'd no longer be the owner of a startup. I'd be a multimillionaire. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of my corner office, sipping a lukewarm espresso and watching the city buzz beneath me. My phone vibrated. It was a message from my lawyer. Funds wired. Deal closed. Congrats, Alex. I stared at the screen, letting the words sink in. 10 years of blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. 10 years of pitching to disinterested investors, fixing bugs at 2 a.m., living off ramen and cheap coffee. And now, it was done. I was done. The office door creaked open. My assistant, Mallory, peeked in. Alex, there's a courier here for you. My eyebrows furrowed. A courier? She nodded, handing over a thick manila envelope. No label, just my name scrawled in elegant cursive across the front. My heart rate quickened. I wasn't expecting anything, not today. I opened it slowly, confused, until I saw the words, Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. For a few seconds, I didn't move. My mind tried to make sense of what I was reading. The words blurred together. Irreconcilable differences. Respondent, Alexandra Reed. Division of assets. My wife, Melissa, was divorcing me. Today. Of all days. I sank into my chair. The room spun. My hand trembled as I reread the first page. We'd been together for 14 years, married for 8. She stood by me through the early struggles of the business, when I could barely afford rent or take her out for dinner. She supported me, encouraged me, told me I was destined for something greater, and now she was walking away. I glanced at the timestamp. The papers were filed just an hour before the deal went through, which meant she knew. She'd waited, strategically, until she was sure I'd signed everything, until the valuation was public knowledge. My net worth had just jumped to the tens of millions. She timed it. Mallory knocked again. Everything okay? I forced a nod, folding the papers and shoving them into my desk. Yeah, just unexpected. She hesitated, sensing the tension, but didn't press. As the door clicked shut behind her, I slumped forward, burying my face in my hands. Memories flashed. Our wedding in Aspen, lazy Sunday mornings cooking pancakes together, the night I told her about my startup idea and she smiled like she believed in me more than I did. Where had it gone wrong? I knew we'd grown distant in the past year. I'd been consumed by work. Melissa had mentioned it more than once, how we barely talked, how I was always on my laptop even during dinner. I'd promised things would change after the acquisition. I told her I'd have more time, that we'd travel, reconnect, maybe even talk about starting a family. I had no idea she'd already made up her mind, or maybe she'd been planning this all along. Was I too blind, too focused on success to see what was slipping through my fingers? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through our last few text conversations. The tone was cool, brief. No, I love yous. No emojis, no warmth, just logistics. What time I'd be home, whether we needed groceries, if I'd remembered to call the plumber. I tapped her contact name, calling Melissa. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I couldn't. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling as if it held answers. The euphoria from the deal was completely gone. In its place, a hollow ache spread through my chest. All my dreams had come true, except the one where she was by my side. The weekend passed in a daze. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not my friends, not even my team, about the divorce papers. Everyone expected me to be out celebrating, toasting to new wealth, new freedom, a new chapter. Instead, I holed up in my condo, blinds drawn, the silence broken only by the occasional hum of the fridge or the buzz of my unanswered phone. I couldn't bring myself to look at the news articles congratulating me on the sale. StartUP Wunderkind, Alex Reed nets $42 million in acquisition deal. That's what they were calling me now. Wunderkind. Success story. Golden boy. If only they knew I'd been served divorce papers the same day I signed the contract. I must have reread Melissa's petition 10 times. She wanted half. Not just of our joint assets, she was claiming stake in my company too. The company I built from scratch. And she might actually have a case. She hadn't just been a passive spouse. She'd worked in my early marketing campaigns, helped organize my first pitch deck, even loaned me money when we couldn't afford to hire a designer. I had no formal contracts then. We were a team, partners in business and in life. I just never imagined she'd ever turn that history into leverage against me. Monday morning, I dragged myself to my lawyer's office. Gavin Patel, sharp as a blade, greeted me with his usual deadpan expression. "Let me guess," he said, waving the papers I'd sent him. "You didn't see this coming." Not even a hint. He tapped the corner of the divorce petition. "The timing wasn't random. She filed the moment your net worth changed. She wants a piece of that pie." I leaned forward. "Does she have a claim?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he opened a file and began flipping through documents. California's a community, property state. Anything earned during marriage is subject to equal division unless you have a prenup. Which I don't. He sighed. Then yes, she can argue she's entitled to half of what you earned during the marriage, including equity in the company. But she didn't work at the company. She contributed indirectly. Courts consider that too. She was your wife. She supported you while you built the business. That counts. I sat back, stunned. So she gets millions just for being married to me? That's one way to put it. Another way is, she gets what the law entitles her to. I rubbed my temples, a slow burn creeping up the back of my neck. It wasn't just the money. It was the betrayal, the cold, calculated nature of it. She'd waited until the precise moment when my value peaked to strike. What are my options? Fight it or settle? Fighting will take months. Air your dirty, laundry in court, legal fees, headlines, emotional damage, or... He pushed a paper toward me. We settle quietly. Offer her a fixed amount and get her to sign a waiver of future claims. I stared at the paper. How much? We start at $6 million. She'll counter. I clenched my jaw. I haven't even spoken to her. She hasn't returned a single call. Gavin shrugged. You're not obligated to talk to her. That's what lawyers are for. But I couldn't let it end that way. I needed to hear it from her. Why she did this. Why now, after everything we'd been through. That evening, I drove to our house. Her house now. A 2-story modern colonial in Silver Lake with glass balconies and a garden she used to tend to every Sunday. I stood at the front door, heart pounding, unsure if I even wanted her to answer. She did. Melissa looked composed. Her hair tied back, neatly, eyes cautious but unsurprised to see me. She didn't say anything. You timed it, I said, voice low. You knew about the deal. You waited. Her expression didn't change. I did. Why? Because it was the only way you'd listen. I blinked. Listen to what? To the fact that you stopped seeing me a long time ago, Alex. I stopped being your partner and became your background noise. That's not true. She raised an eyebrow. Isn't it? You didn't even notice I moved into the guest room 2 months ago. I was speechless. I hadn't noticed. Or maybe I had and told myself it was temporary, that everything would fix itself after the acquisition. Then why not talk to me? I asked, almost pleading. She crossed her arms. I did. For months. But you were too busy chasing a dream to realize you'd lost everything that mattered along the way. I couldn't speak, couldn't argue. She stepped back and gently closed the door, leaving me on the porch, surrounded by silence. I stood there for a long time before walking away. The days that followed were a blur. I was technically a multimillionaire, but I felt more broke than I'd ever been. Not financially, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Melissa's words haunted me. You were too busy chasing a dream to realize you'd lost everything that mattered. I couldn't stop thinking about what else I'd missed. If I hadn't noticed her moving into the guest room, what other signs had I overlooked? Had she tried to tell me she was unhappy? Had she been planning this for longer than I realized? I needed answers. Not the kind Gavin could give me, not legal ones, but personal ones, and I wasn't going to get them by waiting around for another court document to show up in the mail. That Friday, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I called Vanessa. Vanessa used to be one of Melissa's closest friends, though they'd drifted in the past year. I'd always liked her. She was blunt, direct, and didn't dance around uncomfortable truths. If anyone knew what was going on behind the scenes, it was her. She picked up on the third ring. "Alex?" she said, clearly surprised. "Didn't expect to hear from you. Hey, do you have a minute?" A pause. "I heard about the divorce. Melissa hasn't said much, but I figured something was going on." "Yeah, it's been rough," she exhaled. "I'll bet." "I need to ask you something," I said. "And I'm not calling to turn you against her or anything like that. I just need to understand what happened." Vanessa hesitated, then said quietly, "You really don't know, do you?" "No." "What?" "She's been planning to leave you for a while. Over a year, actually." My stomach dropped. "What?" "She came to me last fall, said she felt invisible, said you didn't listen, didn't notice, didn't care unless it was about your company. She didn't want your money, Alex. She just wanted your attention." "She never said—" "She did," Vanessa cut in gently. "You just didn't hear her." I sank onto the edge of my bed, fingers gripping the phone tightly. "She used to tell me how proud she was of you," Vanessa continued. "How she believed in you when no one else did. But somewhere along the way it stopped being your dream. It became the dream. The only thing you could see. She could have told me she was unhappy." "She did," she repeated. "The night of your third pitch to investors, when she waited 2 hours for you at that restaurant. The time she showed you the vacation brochure and you laughed. You brushed her off every time. After a while, she stopped trying." There was a long pause. "Was there someone else?" I asked, voice barely a whisper. "No," Vanessa said firmly. "Not in the way you're thinking, but she started building a life without you in it. Started therapy. Started volunteering at a local shelter. She was preparing herself to walk away. You just didn't notice." Tears burned behind my eyes. "I feel like I didn't even know her." "You did," Vanessa said. "You just stopped seeing her." I thanked her and hung up, but the weight in my chest didn't lift. That night, I found the vacation brochure Vanessa mentioned. It had been tucked away in one of the kitchen drawers. Italy. A small coastal town with cobbled streets and sea view. Villas. Melissa had scribbled notes in the margins. Dates, ideas, things she wanted to do. Wine tasting. Boat ride. Sunset dinners. I'd laughed at that. In the guest room closet, her side still had a few things she hadn't taken yet. A scarf, a small framed photo of us from our second anniversary. We were sitting on the hood of our old car, holding coffees, looking like idiots in love. I remembered that day so clearly. She had insisted we stop and watch the sunrise over the canyon. I wanted to get back to work, but she'd made me stay. It had been one of the best mornings of my life. I sat on the floor of that room for hours, surrounded by memories I hadn't appreciated at the time. The woman I had loved, the life we had built. It was all there. I just hadn't looked, and now it was slipping away. The secrets she'd kept weren't betrayals. They were truths I had ignored, warnings I had dismissed, wishes I hadn't taken seriously, and now I was paying the price. But a part of me still hoped it wasn't too late. By Monday, my lawyer Gavin had reviewed the documents Melissa's attorney sent over. He called me in for a meeting that I wasn't emotionally prepared for, but I went anyway. I needed to face it, all of it. I sat in his office with a black coffee I hadn't touched. Gavin slid the papers across the table toward me. His expression, unreadable. "This is what she wants," he said, tapping a section with a red mark. 50% of all assets, including your company sale. I blinked. "But we signed a prenup." "Yes, but the prenup is 10 years old and poorly worded in a few sections. Her attorney is arguing that it's invalid due to changed circumstances, and a lack of full financial disclosure when it was originally drafted. Changed circumstances? Gavin leaned forward. The company wasn't worth anything back then. Now it is. And since she supported you through years of development and financial uncertainty, it's a compelling narrative. My head pounded. So what? You're telling me she gets half? No. I'm telling you they're asking for half. Big difference. We can fight this. But he hesitated. It could get messy, long, public. I slumped back. I'd built this company from the ground up. I remembered every sleepless night, every investor pitch, every panic attack before payroll cleared. Melissa had supported me, yes. She'd kept the lights on during the darkest times. But she hadn't been in the trenches building it code by code. Still, Vanessa's words echoed in my head. She just wanted your attention. What are my options? I asked quietly. Well, Gavin said, we can go scorched earth. Fight tooth and nail in court. That'll take months, cost hundreds of thousands, and strain you even more emotionally. Or, we make a counteroffer. Something that acknowledges her contributions, shows you're not trying to rob her blind, but protects your future. I considered it. Fighting didn't appeal to me, not out of fear. I had resources and evidence and a solid legal team. But because I didn't want to hate Melissa, I didn't want to turn what was left of our relationship into a battlefield. Draft a counter, I said. Give her enough to start fresh, a generous settlement, but not half. She didn't build this company. Gavin nodded. Any number in mind? 2 million, clean, no strings. He raised an eyebrow. That's bold. She might laugh at that. Then she can come back with something realistic. I'm not here to grovel, but I'm not going to pretend she meant nothing. He leaned back, scribbling a note. Okay, I'll run it by her lawyer. Expect fireworks. I left Gavin's office feeling strangely calm. It wasn't the money that scared me anymore. It was the meaning behind it. What this divorce was going to say about who I had been, who I was becoming. That night, I sat in the backyard with a glass of wine, something I rarely did. The company was sold. My calendar was empty. My life had been hollowed out in one clean sweep. Then around 8 p.m. I got a text from Melissa. Got your counteroffer. Didn't expect it to feel this sad. I stared at the message, unsure if it was sarcasm, disappointment, or genuine emotion. I replied, "It's not about what you're worth. It's about what we lost." She didn't respond right away. But 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Can we talk? Just talk? I hesitated. My pride screamed no. But my heart... Come over, I typed. Front door's open. I didn't know what I was hoping for. Closure? A miracle? Forgiveness? But when I heard the soft creak of the door and saw her, standing there, still in the coat I used to tease her about, her hair pulled back loosely, I felt something shift. Not reconciliation. Not yet. But something real. We sat at the kitchen table like old friends. Or maybe like two people who used to be in love. I didn't expect you to be fair, she said quietly. I didn't expect you to leave, I replied. She nodded. I didn't want to. But I had to. I get it now, I said. She looked at me and for the first time in weeks her eyes softened. We're not going to fix this tonight, she whispered. I know. But thank you. For not making it uglier than it has to be. We talked, for an hour. About nothing. About everything. And when she left, she hugged me, not like a wife, but like someone who had once truly loved me, and maybe still did, in some quiet corner of her heart. The morning after Melissa came over, I woke, up feeling strangely lighter. We hadn't resolved anything, not officially. The divorce proceedings were still active, the counteroffer still under review. But something in the air had changed, like the tension had broken just enough for clarity to seep through the cracks. Checked my phone, half expecting another message from her, but there was nothing. Instead, I received an email from Gavin. Her response, and a proposal. I opened it with a tight chest. The document was a revised settlement draft. Melissa wasn't accepting the $2 million flat out. But she wasn't demanding half anymore either. Instead, she'd come back with a figure, $4.5 million plus a condition. She wanted to waive all future claims to my business ventures. No spousal support, no dragging things through court. Clean break. There was a note attached to the proposal, in her handwriting, scanned in from her lawyer's office. This isn't about the money. I just want to walk away with some dignity left. I read the note over and over again. It hurt, not because of what she asked for, but because it was so deeply human. She wasn't trying to destroy me. She wasn't playing games. She just didn't want to feel like she'd wasted 15 years being invisible next to my ambition. I signed the papers 2 days later. It should have felt like a victory, walking away with my company, my money, my future. But all I felt was the quiet hum of acceptance, the kind that settles in when you stop resisting what already is. The next few weeks moved quickly. Melissa officially moved out of our old home. I had already begun staying in a condo closer to the city, something modern, minimal, still smelling faintly of fresh paint and staged furniture. I began thinking about what I wanted next. For years, my life had been defined by milestones: seed funding, Series A, launch, expansion, exit. Now, there was just silence. I spent time with people I hadn't seen in years. Old college friends, my brother's family. I even started working. Out again. Nothing intense, just long walks, some boxing, a bit of breathing room. One evening, I ran into Vanessa at a networking mixer. She smiled when she saw me, and for a moment, I wasn't sure whether to wave or retreat. She approached first. So, divorced yet? I laughed awkwardly. Just finalized. She nodded, eyes kind. You look better. Better than what? Than the guy who looked like he hadn't slept since 2019. We found a quiet table near the back and talked for a while. I told her about the sale, the papers, the offer Melissa made. She listened carefully. That's rare, she said. Most splits don't end that gracefully. Graceful is a stretch. But I think we both realized neither of us was the villain. Vanessa tilted her head. Do you think you could have saved it? I paused. Maybe. If I'd noticed the cracks sooner. If I hadn't equated success with working 18-hour days. She nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes, the cost of winning is too high. That stuck with me. A few nights later, I sat at my new place, surrounded by silence and the soft clink of ice in my glass. I thought about everything Melissa and I had been through. The good years, the hard ones, the emptiness that crept in quietly. I realized that building a company and building a relationship aren't that different. Both require attention, intention, and humility. And I'd given all of mine to only one. The next day, I did something unexpected. I reached out to a nonprofit I'd heard Melissa mention years ago. A program for young women in tech. She'd wanted to start a mentoring chapter in our city, but I'd always told her I was too busy to help. Now, I wasn't busy. I wasn't anything, really. Just a man with time and money, looking for meaning. I offered to sponsor the program. Fully. No press, no board seat. Just funding and the willingness to help. When Melissa found out, she sent me a short text. I heard. Thank you. That was always my dream. I replied. I know. I'm sorry it took me so long to listen. She didn't respond after that. She didn't need to. That moment, that message, it was the turning point. Not because I won, not because I salvaged the relationship, but because, for the first time, I truly understood what I had lost. And more importantly, who I still had the chance to become. It was a quiet Saturday morning when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I just finished a run and was still in sweats, coffee in hand, trying to read a book I'd abandoned 6 times in the last year. I checked the security camera out of habit. It was Melissa. She stood there, alone, holding a large manila envelope and a nervous smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I opened the door, unsure of what to say. It had been 3 weeks since the papers were finalized. We hadn't spoken since the text exchange about the non-profit program. Hey, she said softly. Hey, can I come in? I stepped aside wordlessly. She walked in like she used to, instinctively slipping off her shoes, glancing at the space like she was mapping it in her mind. Her gaze landed on the minimalist decor, the framed photo of the ocean I hadn't bothered to hang yet. "I like it," she said. "Very you now." I wasn't sure what that meant, but I nodded. "Thanks." She handed me the envelope. "This is yours. I found it in one of the old file cabinets. You'll probably want to keep it." I opened it cautiously. Inside were printed photos, snapshots from our early years, our wedding, the first apartment we'd rented with furniture from Craigslist, a trip to Rome we took before I landed my first round of funding, us on the beach, laughing, holding wine glasses and looking like we didn't have a care in the world. "I thought I lost these," I murmured, my fingers brushing over one photo of us in Capri. Melissa had been wearing that ridiculous floppy hat she insisted was high fashion. "You did." "I kept them," she said, sitting down on the edge of the couch. "I wasn't sure you'd want them, but I figured, if not now, then when?" I sat across from her. For a moment, there was nothing but the low hum of the fridge in the background. "Why are you really here, Mel?" She looked down at her hands. No jewelry. She'd stopped wearing her wedding ring months ago. I noticed the faint tan line it left. "I came to thank you," she said finally, "for the nonprofit support. I didn't expect that. I thought you'd write a check and move on with your life." "I almost did," I admitted, "but it didn't feel right. You cared about that cause, and I never gave it the time it deserved." She smiled faintly. "It wasn't about the cause, not entirely. It was about you seeing me, seeing what mattered to me." I nodded. "I know that now." She sighed. "It's strange. For so long I was angry, furious even. But now that it's over, I'm just sad. Not because we're apart, but because we let so much pass us by." "I feel that too," I said quietly. We sat in silence, flipping through the photos together. Occasionally we'd laugh at a bad haircut or cringe at a clothing choice. It was the first time in years we shared something without tension, without expectation. "I'm moving," she said suddenly. My head snapped up. "Moving? Where?" "Seattle. I got a job offer. Director of Outreach for a Women in Tech incubator. Full-time. They want me to build it from the ground up." "That's amazing." I meant it. She beamed. "It feels like the start of something. You deserve that." There was a pause. She studied my face, and I hers. The woman I once loved deeply. Maybe I still did, in a different way. "I don't hate you, you know," she said gently. "I don't hate you either." She stood up, brushing invisible lint from her jeans. "Well, I should go. My flight's tomorrow." I walked her to the door. As she opened it, she turned back, eyes glistening with something not quite tears, but close. "We were good once." "We were," I agreed. She hesitated, then leaned in and kissed my cheek. Soft, brief, final, and then she left. I stood there long after the door clicked shut, envelope still in my hand. The air felt different, like something important had been said, even if it was unsaid. Melissa had walked out of my life for good, this time. But instead of feeling like I'd lost something, I felt like I'd been handed a chance to rebuild from the truth. A clean slate. An unexpected visitor had reminded me of the man I used to be. And maybe, just maybe, the man I still had time to become. The morning after Melissa left, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows of my new apartment. It was the first time in months I hadn't set an alarm. No board meetings to prepare for, no panicked emails from my CTO, no stress about investor calls. Just quiet. I got out of bed, made coffee, and sat on the balcony, watching the city hum to life. People rushed off to jobs, dog walkers strolled by, and kids waited for the school bus. For the first time in a long while, I realized I didn't have anywhere to be. And I wasn't behind on anything. I wasn't lost. I was free. The thought scared me and thrilled me. For the past decade, I'd been building, sprinting, grinding, toward something, toward a version of success I thought would validate everything. But now that I'd sold the company, had more money than I knew what to do with, and no one left to impress, I felt like I was standing at the start of a very empty road. and for once, I didn't need to run. That morning, I decided I was going to spend the day doing only things I wanted to do. First up, I took a long walk around the lake near my building. No headphones, no podcast, just the sound of birds and water and my own thoughts. I noticed things I never had time for before. The way the light danced on the surface of the lake, the scent of jasmine from a nearby garden, the laughter of strangers. I'd been so focused on the future for years that I'd forgotten what it felt like to live in the now. Then I stopped by a cafe I used to visit in college. The barista looked about 20, bright-eyed and probably halfway through a film degree. He gave me a nod of respect when I ordered a cortado. I sat down at a table by the window and pulled out a notebook. Not a laptop. A notebook I hadn't written. In one since my early startup days, back when I was just brainstorming ideas, dreaming about possibilities. But now the blank page didn't feel intimidating. It felt full of promise. I wrote for 2 hours. Not business plans or pitch decks, just ideas, thoughts, feelings, maybe even the start of a book. After that, I went to the museum. I couldn't remember the last time I'd gone without being dragged by Melissa or as part of a fundraiser event. This time, I walked the halls slowly, letting each exhibit pull me in. I stood for 10 minutes in front of a giant abstract painting, wondering what it was supposed to mean, and then realizing it didn't matter. Art didn't have to be understood to be felt. I had lunch at a food truck park, sat on a bench, eating gourmet tacos, people watching. 2 teenagers flirted shyly near a smoothie stand. An old man in a fedora fed breadcrumbs to a pigeon. It was simple. It was beautiful. Later in the day, I walked past a co-working space advertising free guest passes. On a whim, I went in. The manager gave me a tour. It buzzed with energy. Freelancers, startup teams, creators building something from scratch. I could see versions of my younger self in those rooms, typing furiously, dreaming big. She asked if I wanted to sign up. I said maybe. I wasn't ready to dive back into anything just yet, but I took a card, just in case. That night, back home, I made dinner for one. No takeout, no delivery. I actually cooked, chopped vegetables, grilled salmon, poured a glass of wine. I ate slowly, savoring every bite. Afterward, I sat on the balcony again. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. I leaned back, exhaled, and realized something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. Peace. Real, honest peace. No noise, no obligations, no pretending, just me. The man who had once defined himself by work, by wealth, by marriage, was now learning to define himself by presence, by simplicity, by choice. And in that stillness, I finally understood what freedom really meant. It wasn't about money or even time, it was about space. The space to decide who I wanted to become, without the pressure to be who I'd been. Tomorrow could bring anything. A new venture, a trip, a love I hadn't imagined yet. But today, I had lived freely, and that was more than enough. The weeks that followed felt like a strange, beautiful blur. With the company sold, the divorce papers served, and my life upended, I had nothing left to prove to anyone, except myself. For the first time, I was making choices based on what I wanted, not what others expected. I spent mornings at the co-working space I'd visited on a whim. The energy was contagious. Young entrepreneurs pitched ideas over coffee. Designers brainstormed in colorful pods, and freelancers tapped away on laptops. I didn't feel out of place. I felt inspired. One afternoon, a young woman approached me during a break. "I think I recognize you," she said shyly. "Are you the founder of that startup that just sold?" I nodded, smiling. "That's me," she grinned. "I'm starting my own company, and honestly, you're kind of a legend around here. If you ever want to chat or mentor, I'd love to buy you coffee." That moment sparked something. I realized my experience, the failures, and victories were valuable not just to me but to others who were just starting out. I began mentoring a few promising entrepreneurs, helping them navigate the roller coaster of startup life. Their excitement was infectious. Their fresh ideas reignited my passion for innovation, but this time, I was in control. No longer was I chasing a single dream that consumed every waking moment. Now, I had a broader purpose: to empower others while rediscovering myself. At home, I finally unpacked the last box from The Move. It held memories I'd stuffed away: photos, letters, tokens from my life with Melissa. I didn't throw them out. I put them in a scrapbook, not to hold on to the past, but to honor the journey that brought me here. One evening, as I walked through the city park, I spotted a small art show set up under twinkling fairy lights. The Mao paintings were vibrant, chaotic, full of raw emotion. Among them, one piece caught my eye: a painting of a phoenix rising from ashes. It spoke to me. That was me. Rising from the ashes of betrayal and loss, rebuilding a life stronger and more authentic than before. I started attending art classes on weekends, something I never had time for before. Painting gave me a new outlet for expression, a way to process the complexity of what I'd been through without words. Slowly, I felt the layers of pain peel away. The bitterness over Melissa's betrayal softened. The shame I'd carried for years dissolved into something gentler: wisdom. One day, a letter arrived in my mailbox. It was from Melissa. Her handwriting was shaky, the paper worn. She apologized for everything. For the lies, for the divorce served like a slap on the day I'd sold the company. She said she realized what she lost, but understood why I couldn't stay. I didn't respond, not because I held a grudge, but because I no longer needed to justify my story to her or anyone else. I was done with the past. Looking ahead, I felt hope for new friendships, new challenges, maybe even love someday. But above all, hope for a future defined by my terms, my pace. The man who was served divorce papers on the day he sold his startup was no longer broken or bitter. He was free and ready for whatever came next.